Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Like I said earlier, I have Mr. Gideon, who is a teacher, and Mr. Kagondu, a psychologist, here to give us a guidance in through the conversation of the day today. Today we're talking about toxic relationships between parents and children, having an entitled child and even having an entitled parent. Like I tried to explain earlier, we have parents who tend to feel like they're entitled to what their children have, just because they brought you to this earth, just because they are the reason that you actually exist. So they feel like you owe them, you owe them when they have needs. It's upon you to actually cater to their needs, basically because maybe they spent their entire life bringing you up. Maybe they spent all they had put together their entire life just to give you a good life. And children as well do have entitlement. I may feel so entitled to my parents' wealth just because I know they have it, because my dad has a car. I mean, I'm supposed to use it. Si mini wake, gari ni yake, mini wake. Sisi wote ni wake, so I have a right to use it. Yes? No? We're gonna get into that. But with me, I have Mr. Kagondu and Mr. Gideon. Karibuni sana.
Thank you so much.
Good to have you back.
Thank you.
Mr. Kagondu, how are you?
Doing fantastic. We are so happy. And more so with what is happening around. Of course, a bit of the nominations, people getting their...
Yes.
Those who are going to deputize them. But more or less the same, I really thank God, for the opportunity to continue serving and supporting, my brothers and sisters out there.
Yes. For those who are joining us for the first time, who is Mr. Kagondu?
Kagondu Jr. is a counseling psychologist and also a transformational coach, working with Men Care Africa, where we heal nations and transform lives. Our main work is to help people negotiate life stages, life issues, dealing with challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis. Today we're talking about toxic parenting and also that element of being entitled. And it brings an element of challenges in, say, in the parent's life or even the kid's life. So how do we get to maneuver that and manage that comes with it, the issues that do manifest as a result of all that. And I can't wait to see, how we go about that.
How we're going to go about it.
Precisely, yeah.
Mr. Gideon, karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
Who is Mr. Gideon?
Oh, yeah. Mr. Gideon Warembo Kariri is, I happen to be doing a lot of stuff. First of all, I'm a student. That is, I do Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics and Computer Science in the School of Pure and Applied Sciences. I'm also a founder of the Accountancy Mathematics and the Accountancy Mathematics Mentorship Program. That is a program that helps students to discover who they are. We go to schools, we mentor students, we help them to find their life purpose and also to be able to navigate through their high school life. I also happen to be a writer. That is an author of the Daily Accountancy Mathematics, Daily Mathematics Challenges and Solutions. And above all, I'm so glad to be here and to kick off with the conversation of the day, because it will be so helpful to the people that are watching us today. Yeah, sure.
I'm so happy to have you here. This is a conversation that I would really want to hear your opinion. Mr. Kagondu, what brings about the entitlement in your opinion? Parents' entitlements. What would you think makes a parent feel so entitled to their children and their children's wealth? Normally it's called black tax. People like to call it black tax.
Yes, it is.
What is this that motivates them to actually be so entitled to what their children have?
When you look at the whole concept of parenting, it's good that we get to ask ourselves, where did this come from? And as human beings, compared to the other members of the animal kingdom, we are the only ones who walk on our lower limbs, the two limbs, and that gives us an advantage, whereby we become smarter than the others in the animal kingdom. And by the mere fact that that is what is happening, you find that we actually have a longer childhood compared to the others in the animal kingdom. And that's why it's very important for us to be under the care of parents, so that at least we're able to learn how to work on ourselves, how to take care of ourselves, how to control the fluids, you understand? And with that, it's a give and take. And most parents out there think that by the mere fact that they are taking care of you, then it's automatic that you have to take care of them. right? And in most cases, it's normally a tit for tat. This could be possibly what happened to them. That's how they were raised. This is what they went through. Probably you hear many parents talk about, I've taken care of you. I've taken you to school. I sacrificed my time, my emotions, everything just to take care of you. And it is your time to give back. Okay, but now that comes with an element of challenges. You know why? Because most kids will ask themselves, mbona ulini
Me, I didn't ask you to bring me here.
did I even send some application and all that? But you find that it's always a give and take, and the same concept you find that happening even with the children, but it's quite interesting when we're in that space whereby you expect that since you have invested in your children,
You
that
expect a
you need
return
to
of
plow back some
investment.
dividends in it. Yes.
Mwalimu,
Oh, yes.
what is your opinion? What do you think? I want you to tell me what you think about children being entitled. Children being, now Kagondo has given us an aspect of parents being entitled to their children, but then there are so many children who are entitled to their parents.
I think one of the things that makes the children to be so entitled to their parents, or rather, I would love to add something small onto that.
Please.
Yeah, I think also to add on that, I think you've given a great insight. And also, most of the parents, they take their children not as a gift from God, but they take their children as just like an asset. They are using it like an asset. They are saying like this is something that I'm investing on so that I can get some financial returns afterwards. But that shouldn't be the case at any moment. They should always take that child or the children that they get as a gift from God, because that child has only come through them, but it is not theirs. It is something that they have been given by God so that they can to take care of them and to bring them up. And actually, eventually, after the end of it all, they will have a question to answer. We gave you this child. Did you take
What
care of them?
did you do with the child?
Yeah, did you do with them? Did you make the best out of them? Yeah, I think that is something which is very important to consider, as much as that is concerned.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now, as a teacher, your opinion in regards to now children being entitled to parents. Now that was parents to their children. But now there's the aspect of children being entitled to their parents. Like earlier on, I gave a story of, I don't know if you heard it, of there's a famous man who owned a famous estate in Nairobi. I'm not allowed to name names. And this man had a son. The son requested the father, since you're wealthy, you have all this property, you're in a good position to invest in me, and I want to start a transport business. Why don't you buy for me a lorry, or rather invest in getting me a lorry to start this transport business so that I can have something of my own? As time went by, the father decided, instead of me buying you a lorry, why don't I get for you a pickup? And as the biashara peaks, we'll see how things go, then I can buy for you a lorry and add on to the investment. Now you'll have a pickup and a lorry. And the son was, it's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't even afford that pickup yourself, right? So you have no choice. Akakubali, and he was bought for the pickup. After he was bought for the pickup, maisha ikaanza kuendelea, he started running his biashara. A short while later, the father decided to invest in a piece of land that was worthy of almost 10 million Kenyan shillings. The son felt like the father did not love him, because you cannot compare the price of a lorry to the price of a 10 million. Where's it compare? It's incomparable. So he felt like the father did not love him. You're not even finding me worthy enough to invest in me. So he killed himself. He committed suicide. That is entitlement of what the parent has. So how is it that you think or you feel like, what is your opinion in regards to children being entitled to their parents? Well, you as a teacher, you're in a better position. Like, I'm sure you've seen children do things in school because their parents did not do, or they expected their parents to do and they did not.
Oh yeah, I think I've now gotten you more clearly.
Yes.
Yeah, I think on that matter, I think the problem actually comes from the bringing when the child is very young, at that tender age, because that is where you start to build the character of the child, to build his or her mental faculties and her behaviors and her characteristics. So I think the most important thing that a parent should do is to be very keen on how he or she is bringing up the child, because you see that we are having a lot of reluctant parents. You see some parents, when a child asks for something, they are always giving them, and they grow that culture that
lazima nipewe.
Lazima nipewe. This is a must. And actually there's a case I was hearing here in Nairobi. A kid of class 3 alikuwa anaendewa shule by now the driver of his parents. Now that driver had gone with the Land Rover, and that child said, no, I'm not going to enter into this vehicle.
What?
Singi na singi. Akasema, if I have to enter, you can only come with a V8. So the teachers
those
tried.
are good problems.
Yeah, now the teachers were trying to convince the child, and also the driver was trying to convince the child to enter into the vehicle.
Aki oye ingia kwa Land Rover.
Aki, and that child really akakata kabisa. And now what happened is that they eventually had to call the dad of the child to talk with the child. And even the dad tried to do the same thing. Please, my son, just enter into the vehicle. We shall sort out this. No, nakakata. Eventually, what they decided to do is that driver was forced
to go back and come back with a
V8. So you see, that is actually the main problem. Actually, I think it's with the parents when they are bringing up their child. And I think the solution to that is to connect with your child. You know, to connect means to deliberately, to consciously, and to intentionally create time with your child. You create time with your child, you talk with him. You know, we have time for what we value, and we have time with who we value.
Yes.
So parents should always give their children the first priority before they even give their job priority, because you see, most of the parents, they go to work at very early morning hours, they come at very late hours.
I was actually getting there, because there are parents who tend to, because I'm never there for my son, because I'm never there for my daughter, I go to work Monday to Sunday to compensate for my absence. If this child wants an aeroplane, power, you can have it, because I'm never there. I'm trying to compensate for my time with money and materialistic things. Mr. Kagondu, is that one of the biggest reasons why children are becoming entitled?
You know, as we advance in life, you find that most of the parents are working class, you know, they're career parents who are out there, you know, trying to make an end to, you know, to their life, and more so make a living, and especially for the children. But the most unfortunate thing is that most of these parents, they invest for the kids and not in the children. Okay, so for them, it's all about getting that name, they're getting that, attaining that status quo, and more so, you know, being the one that people are praising out there, say in the village or even in the estate. And what happens is they are so submerged in terms of looking for that name, for that status, and they tend to forget about
the status and the money.
They tend to forget about their kids. And I'm happy with what Mr. Gideon is saying. You know, in most of them, you find that they don't have time with their children. And as a way, like you have said, to compensate all that, they give them anything that they're asking for. So if today I feel like I don't want to eat ugali with nyama, it should be chemusha ama ikwe ni karanga, then the kid has all that, the audacity to actually, you know, name it all. But the most challenging thing is that you find that when they compensate their presence with material things, then this child is going to become entitled. And whenever we don't have the availability of these material things that they're given, or even maybe going out and all that, you find them harming themselves. And
because
this is
I'm wondering, actually, in a situation like he's given a time, God forbid, but if that father loses the Land Rover, loses the V8, and now umtoto lazima ende mpaka na kitu kama Uber. How would that child receive that kind of information?
And you see, we are not living in a realistic world.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much euphoria in how we live. There's so much, you know, we are trying to fake it, and we are not making it at the end of the day.
Yes,
okay, so you want to give them this kind of a lifestyle, trying to impress, trying to make an impression out there, but eventually it's going to affect these children, because I've seen cases whereby the transition has been very challenging for these kids. You know, for the parents, it can be a bit easy for them because they understand what is happening. But remember, when you have placed your children up there with this kind of a lifestyle, coming lower to adapt the normalcy, you know, to the kind of a life that you're adapting to, then that becomes a bit of a challenge. And this is where we need to actually expose the children to all matter of lifestyle. You know, most of them, they don't know what it means to be in a matatu. Some of them, they don't know what it means to eat bread, to have breakfast, bread without butter. You know, for them, it has to have some bacon or something, right? So they don't know what it means to lack. And that's why they take everything for granted. So for them, there's an element of entitlement, and that's why whenever we have those the transitions, it becomes a very big challenge. And like in the case that you have given unto us, then they end up even committing suicide. Yes.
Mwalimu, at what point do you think we put a boundary between the entitlement, especially from the entitlement of children to their parents? At what point do we build that boundary?
I think that boundary should be built all through. That's from the moment that the kid is at the tender age, from the age that the kid is able to communicate, up to now the level that you've departed and that the kid have moved to his or her house. As long as the kid is under your roof, you also should have a command of word to that child. You should know that this child, you should understand the reason that a child is asking for this kind of thing. Why is he or she is asking for this item? And he should never demand for something without your approval. You are the one that authorizes and says that this is what you should have, because as a parent, I believe that you've got experience that is to manage the kid. And also, I would love to say, for you to understand your kid and the things that your kid needs, the best thing to do is that you create that time with them. You know, there are many parents that says that, well, I have paid the school fees.
I've taken you to the best schools.
I've taken you to the best school.
You have lacked absolutely nothing. You even have it in excess.
But you now as a parent, you forgot that by so doing, what you are doing is that you are reducing yourself from the highest title that is a parent to the lowest title of a sponsor, because that because that is the indivisible minimum that a person can ever do. But the most important thing as a parent is parenting, and that is why you are called a parent.
Mr. Kagondo, at what point do you think you can create that boundary?
You know, like he's saying, I love it, you know, from the onset. And, you know, these kids are very smart. As much as we say that they come into this world with an empty slate, you know. They have their own intelligence, they have their own personality, like you're saying, and are able to pick things very fast, okay? And when you interact with the teachers from the lower primary or even the early childhood, you know, school, the PP1 and the PP2, they'll tell you that they're also trying to test the waters, you know, by how they conduct themselves. And this is the right moment, and especially when they're growing up, for you to instill the discipline that we're talking about. It's not always a give and take, you know. Whenever they're asking for this, then you're giving unto them. Whenever they do something that is contrary to what you had agreed on, then you let it go, you know. For you, like he's saying, you reduce yourself from the title of being a parent to being a sponsor. Why? Because for you, you're just providing and all that. And I feel because each and every level, as the children grow, there's some element of understanding. Then this is where it should come in from the onset, okay? And there is what we call where we say corrective discipline, whereby you are vitamin no.
Nowadays, most parents do not have
the vitamin,
art of vitamin no.
And a very supportive way to discipline your children. Yes, as much as you are going to instill some pain, it's also okay for you to actually do it in a very supportive way. Let them know why you're doing all that. You understand? If they can be able to hold a conversation. Today we are not going to go for swimming because of ABCD. They need to understand that it's not a must for them to have that, right? And it's okay for you to even tell them no, as much as you know that you can afford. In most cases, every other evening, every other weekend, we are out there for the party, having pizza and all that. Yet, when they ask for it and you're giving unto them, then they can't have it in them that there's a moment that we can lack, And this is why we need to be very intentional as parents. We are not there for the sake of passing time. We are not there for the sake of having children and seeing them grow, add weight or even numbers to their ears. And like you saying, it's very important for us to do it when we are very sober and very intentional. Why? Because if we fail to do that, then eventually that is going to catch up with us and we are going to suffer at the long run, So very supporting them and putting boundaries, having boundaries, and this should be also done in a very good way, in a very supportive way, because in most cases you find that most parents in that particular case scenario, they actually tend to abuse those boundaries. Yes, it's good that you get to appreciate how they feel or whatever it is happening, but it's also good that you also have them understand what is happening and the reasons why you're doing A, B, C, D. That would be very key.
Before we get to the how we actually do it, Mwalimu, how does a teacher come into this conversation? Like, how does a teacher come into disciplining an entitled child? What is the role of a teacher?
Actually, that's a very nice question. As a teacher is like a model. It's like a driver. Once you're given the child, it's like you've been given the keys to operate on that child, because the child is always looking up on you. And as a driver, the first and the most important thing is, let's say you are a driver, just a mere driver of a certain car, is to know where you are going. So you should be able to understand that this car, the child, or rather the vision of the child, and what the child wants to achieve in life. So, and actually that is very fundamental, because by so doing, you are able to tell that this child, or rather the things that this child is lacking in order to achieve his or her goals. And also another thing that comes in as a teacher is now to be able to read through the lines of the child, because I find that teachers, because they stay with their children for a long time, or rather for a long period of time, they are able to tell that this child might be having this kind of problem.
Issues, yes.
Yeah, he's having these issues. And now as a teacher, you are able to sit down with the child, you are able to help them to navigate through, and also to maybe come up with some mental advices that would be of help to the students. And also as a teacher, because now a teacher is like a link between the students and the teacher. And the parents, sorry. Yes. And actually a teacher is also a parent whenever the parent isn't there. So when a teacher receives a student, he also reserves, or rather takes up, the role of the parents that we've previously discussed.
I'm sure there are situations whereby you as a teacher, you will tell a child ABCD, this is not how we go about some issues, this is not how we behave in certain instances, but there are parents that retaliate. How do you deal with that? Mbona unaambia mtoto wangu hivyo? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? I'm sure you've encountered such situations. How do you deal with such situations where now both the child and the parents are entitled?
Oh yeah, sure. I think actually it's you've given a very nice example, especially that one of no talking now to the child in that kind of voices that are not so good. And actually, before I move into that question, it's good that I mentioned that for parents, because I know that there are some parents that are watching us, the words that we utter to us to our child are very important and influential to them, because words can break them and the words can build
Also
them.
make them, yes.
Yeah. You see, even when God was creating the creation, He was saying, "Let there be," and it was. And also, we as human beings, we are given that ability to create through words. Like now, we create things through our words. Like this, we create it and we call it a microphone. We create that thing and we call it something else. We create time. We call it like a time. You say that it have got 60 seconds. It is making a minute. So that word that you are putting there, it's like a seed, and eventually that word will one day come out to be a reality. So it's a very good thing that they observe the words that they tell them. And now, how do now the teachers now deal with that issue? I think the first thing is now to talk with the students, because that is where they get to understand where is this problem coming from. Is it coming from fellow students, or is it coming from where this child is coming? And that is from their homes. And if now the teacher realizes that the problem is coming from the home, then the teacher may now sit down with the students and tell them, say for example, that is he can tell them not to take anything, or rather to agree anything to control them, that is their parents, in terms of uttering negative positivity or other negative things into their lives, and also not to agree to be influenced by the surroundings of the place that he or she is.
Mr. Kagondo, from a psychological perspective, how do we go about this? Dealing with, you have an entitled parent and an entitled child. This entitled child has borrowed from the entitled parent, and the entitled parent is pouring into this child, borrowing the entitlement from them. How do you deal with such situations? As a psychologist, have you even ever had a parent bring to you a child for counseling? Amekujia counseling, ama they don't come for counseling because they're entitled?
It happens.
It happens. How do you deal with such situations?
And you know, we said that monkey see, monkey do.
Yes.
And most of these kids are actually copying what their parents are doing. And no wonder they'll come to school and you're trying to correct or discipline this particular student. And the teacher is there trying to support by all means. But now the parents, it's like, you know, in our home, in our clan, this doesn't happen, you know. And you can't maybe label my child, you know, in a certain way, or even say that they have done A, B, C, D. So that tells you that it's quite a challenge, and especially when this is coming from the two of them, right? And this is why we say empowerment is very important. And also that leads to the question of, you know, if I'm having a partner who is also entitled and my child is entitled, how do I get to deal with that? And that can be quite a bit of a challenge, and especially to the one on the receiving end. To the one on the receiving end. And that tells you parenthood is an area that we don't even apply to get to, you know. You find that the interview, it's the good work of sex, right? And the results, the work, it will be that particular assignment that you've been given to be a parent, you understand? And then the contract, there's no pay. You know, there is no even some sick off days and all that. And you find that in such a scenario where many parents get into this particular space without that awareness, empowerment is very important. And as much as, yes, we have many parents who are out there and they feel kind of entitled, and you find the same trickling down into their kids, then with the teachers, they have a lot of work to do, you know, trying to support this particular child when they are in their on their hands, you understand? When they come to me, it's a matter of trying to help them understand. But remember, they have to first appreciate the mere fact that they have a challenge. If they don't, then it will be a very big challenge for me to help them walk out of it. Why? Because if they don't appreciate that they're having that particular challenge, then helping them even acknowledge
it's a problem.
It's a challenge, you know, and even they can't get that help. So the question is, are they in the position to actually appreciate that they need the much needed help? All right. And this is where they say, even with the teachers, Mr. Gideon can actually attest to this. The way that we see a child, the way that they present themselves, it will be a reflection of what happens at home, But many parents don't acknowledge that, Mimi najua mtoto wangu vizuri, nimemulea venye inafaa, unamwekelea hii maneno yote. And you see that kind of a situation, it will be very hard for you, And this is where we call for, whenever we have such meetings, say in school, for the parents to be taken through a talk on say parenting. It's very important for them to attend, right? And what happens is, in case I engage or I have a clientele, especially the children who have such challenges, then I also have to incorporate the whole family system, Why? Because you find that it revolves around, and there are some things that be the contributing factors, say in that particular family. If we don't put that into some arrest, then there will be some element of a continuity of the same behavior. So working as a family, that will be very important, and this is where we ask, or rather say that particular person who has come in for the support, or rather for the therapy, that would be the identifying patient, the IP, and that would be our door, the leeway to the family to support them and help them to understand that they actually have a challenge, which we hope that they're going to agree and be able to work on. Yes.
Mwalimu, I'm trying to understand. In my head, I'm picturing you as a teacher dealing with multiple entitled children. Huyu anajua hivi ndio anafanyanga kwao, huyu ndio anajua hapana, mimi kwetu huwa hatuchapwi, the other one knows kwetu lazima tukule sausages. You have a whole classroom of entitled children. How do you enable a conversation with those children to come into an understanding, a mutual understanding of behavior, not being entitled, you're not supposed to do this, because all of them are entitled, right? All of them know, most of them rather, or rather some of them, they know that there's how they are treated at their homes. They know that there are some things that they have to do. Wezi waambia, kwa waambi wangwi. How do you deal with such students? Now they are multiple. How do you enable conversation? Even others tend to be bullies because, mimi hakuna mtu anaweza niuliza mama yangu atakuja aseme I know my child.
Oh yeah, sure. And actually that is one of the biggest challenges that we are encountering in schools, because we are finding that this kind is raised in this kind. kind. So there's a lot of diversity in the perception and rather in the upbringing of the children. But now you've brought now these children in the same classroom. There's this child who amelelewa to like everything that they ask they are given. There's this one who is now morally disciplined in terms of knowing what to ask for and not what to ask for, and getting satisfied by what they get. So I think the most important thing is to teach them rather the fundamentals, principles. That is to teach them by showing them, or rather by, sometimes you see, like most of the parents, what they do is that they don't train their children, but they teach them. And there's a very big line between teaching and training, because in training you lead them by what to do, but now in teaching them you just tell them what to do. So as a teacher, now what we do is that we show them, like we as teachers, when we are in classroom, when they are maybe asking for something, we take them through the process that if you're asking for this, like let's say like an example, like we do like practicals, like the physics practicals. Mm-hmm. Now you see there are some students who demand for things that the school can't afford. Mm-hmm. And also they demand, like they get some chemicals that the school can't afford. Now you take them through that process of understanding that this is what the school can afford because these are the funds that we have. Also other things, like you're finding that even while in school, because these students are used to ask for something and get immediately, they are saying that we want a motivational trip to go to Dubai. And the school amount, even the and the school even cannot even doesn't
it.
even have a quarter of the amount that is supposed to be there. Even the school doesn't even have a good amount
That
of
kind of
books.
budget.
Yeah, even the books that they're having are not even enough. So what the teachers do is now to train them when they are in school, as opposed to what they get at home, that is the teaching. Yeah, we train them by showing them and instead of
Guiding
by
them.
just telling them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Kagondu, earlier on you said that parents should learn how to have conversation with their children, how to sit down and talk to them. But then there are parents who don't know how to talk to their children. There are parents who are, let's call them toxic parents. Like they don't know the right, like Mwalimu said, the words that you utter to a child. You know, there's parents who do not know how to have a relationship with their children. Yani yeye ni mzazi na wewe ni mtoto, and the relationship ends there. Mimi nikisha kulipia school fees na uko na chakula and a roof over your head, that's it. How do we work around toxic parents? Parents who are very toxic to their children. In the essence where you try to even come up with a conversation with your parent, na hata hizitaka kukusikiza. I don't have that time. What have you lacked?
It's a big challenge that we have out there, and especially with the toxic parents. You know, these are parents who put their needs first, you know, before the welfare and the needs of this particular child. And it's important for us to ask ourselves, where is this coming from? You know, because in most cases we tend to really blame, you know, this particular character who is conducting themselves in a certain way. But the truth of the matter is there's always a genesis to why we conduct ourselves the way that we do.
And
right?
what are some of these reasons? What are some of these?
Remember, we say that in most scenarios and in most cases, this is a career that we get into without prior preparations, right? And we can ask ourselves, in what ways do one become a parent? It could be through a mutual agreement, you know, with your partner, and you're like, you know, we can make a family out of ourselves, right? And bring kids into this world. But there are also situations whereby one can be abused, you know. You go through rape, and whenever you get this particular child, you become pregnant in the process, you have an unwanted child in the picture, right? And the way that you relate with them will eventually be affected by the mere fact that you had no plan for this particular child. The other thing, it would be there's a possibility that you went through abuse as a child, you know, as you're growing up. And when you become one, you tend to mirror what happened to you. So you tend to repeat the same mistakes. The cycle continues, you know. And if you're not careful, that will also trickle down to this particular child.
Can we also say the way our parents were brought up? Kitambo I hear, hata ukitoka shule upatane na mwalimu, you almost melt down because this is a teacher. You almost lay flat on the ground to show respect to the teacher. Unasimama kwanza mwalimu wapite.
Absolutely. And yes. I found myself doing the same.
You also doing those things. So can we also say it's the behaviors that were instilled in them growing up?
Absolutely. And we say that most of these are learned behavior. Okay. So you find there is a whole lot of reasons why we find ourselves having this particular crop of parents who tend to be toxic. And in this case, you find that there's an element of competition even with the child, you know, because I didn't get ABCD and you have the privilege of getting this, then mbono unaniambia, you know, and becomes a whole lot of show with how the parents interact with the kids, right? There's also a lot of sabotaging whenever we think about the well-being and the welfare of this particular child, where you find that the parents are portraying a very negative picture on this particular child, right? And you also find that for those who may be abusing some substance, say talk about alcohol, they tend to be very toxic, you know, and in their sense, they don't give ample or proper care to this particular child. And that's why you find that there's a whole lot of toxicity, you know, when you talk about this kind of parents. And when you think about that, then you can tend to have it in mind that when you have a child who has been brought up in a certain way, then they tend to become a replica of the same. So if you are being brought up in a dysfunctional family, then you also tend to be a dysfunctional adult in future.
And you cannot give what you do not have.
Actually, that's so true. You never share from an empty cup.
Yes.
You have to fill your cup first, and if my pot has tea, then that is what I'm going to share with you. So it's quite unfortunate that you expect this kind of a parent to be so kind, to be very supportive to their kids, to their children, yet they never got that, right? And most of them, they are not even aware why they conduct themselves the way that they do.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
For them it's very normal, for me to have an argument, to kick around my kids, for me not to offer proper care, to neglect them, to abuse them, because this is what I'm familiar with.
Yes.
All right. And what you are used to, this is possibly what you're going to bring on the table. And that's why it's very important for us to get to know where is this coming from. So that tells you, as a child, it would be a very big challenge for you to deal with a parent of that particular kind, and that's why you find most of them, when you listen to Mwalim, talk about how kids in schools are conducting themselves. Whenever we have these fires in school, in discipline cases, it's always good that you get to dig deeper, get to understand where is this child coming from, because it's actually a replica, of what is happening at home.
I would actually want Mwalimu to give us an opinion on how to deal with such. How do you deal with such children, the children who have, I don't want to call them toxic parents, but those kind of parents who are not able to communicate with their children. Like he's saying, the children who start fires in schools, the children who are bullies, the children, those kind of children.
Oh, yeah, that's very important, and I actually totally agree with the words of Mr. Kagondu. I think that one of the most, or rather the most important thing is now to call the parents first. We start now from the roots, because now the problem is coming now from the parenting side. Now, once we call the parents, we take them now through a mentoring, or rather a parenting talk, because you see most of the parents, they aren't having a lot to offer to their students, or rather to their children, because you see, you cannot point to moral places where you've never been. So you must have gone through that moral place so that you can be able to point to your children, and also to teach the parents to be able to now do as they tell their children, because you see, children are like tape recorders. They record each and every move that you make. You see, actually, in today's century, the 21st century, the children, if you look at most of them, they don't listen to what you say, but what they do is they copy what you say. So if we could share these ideas to the parents and actually help them to be able to understand that there have been many changes that have happened as time goes by, because as a generation goes by, we cannot parent them through through the same way that we were parented. You see, at our old age, or rather now the parents that are ahead of us, they were parenting the people that came now after them by just telling them, do this. But now today's kid, they are born like they don't want to be told anything.
They know everything.
Yeah, they know everything. So what you are telling them, they are like, I already know that. Why are you telling me? But there is one thing that they never run from. They never run away from, and that is from copying what you do. They will always copy each and every step that you make, because as a parent, what you do, you don't produce the kind of the child that you want, but you produce a replica of who you are. You produce your duplicate.
A mini you.
Yeah, a mini you. So like
a clone of yourself.
Yeah, if you are Kinyanjui or Waroi, you will produce some Warois in you. So, and how are you producing these Warois? It's by what you are doing. So it's very important as well as teachers to take parents, to call them for meetings. We have that session to talk with them on how they can be able to now bring up their children well.
Mr. Kagondu, earlier on, as you were talking about creating of boundaries, when you're creating boundaries, you don't expect that they will be received very positively. So at that point, when you're creating boundaries between parents to children and children to their parents, how do you deal with that situation whereby the parents don't want to accept the boundaries you've created, and the children do not want to live by the boundaries their parents have created.
You know, what is important is for us to have an awareness, you know, and in this case, we're talking about the benefits of these boundaries, because you can't appreciate or rather take in that which you don't know, and you don't appreciate the benefits of it, okay? And in most cases, the reason why you find that there's a push and pull between the two, and the more so with the boundaries that we're trying to create, it's because there's no understanding, a proper understanding of why we're having all this. In, you know, in most cases, whenever we're having communication, many don't listen to respond. They just want to make their case heard, you know, and they don't appreciate what the other person is going through or experiencing, right? And this is why we say, whenever we talk about boundaries between kids and their parents, or even between the spouses, you know, because in most cases you may find even them becoming very toxic to one another. You know, it's good that you get to appreciate what are the needs of each and everyone, or rather every other character in this particular scenario. If it is the parents, what is their need? And in this case, it's good also that we get to appreciate that also children, they have their needs. You know, in cases whereby there are challenges at home, say we have lost someone significant, we only think about the spouse, and we never get to think about the child, okay? How they are faring on, okay? Whenever there's separation, there's divorce and all that, we never get to think about the kid, right? Whenever we are moving towns, shifting from one town to the other, relocating from one neighborhood to the other, we only think about our own well-being, but we get to think about how the children are faring on. Remember, they had their social circle, you know, friends that they used to play with, right? They had grown some attachment with that particular neighborhood, but you get to think about the transition. So the children also have needs, and this is why emotions exactly. And whenever you feel that they're kind of ishish, and especially with how they adapt with the boundaries that have been set, it's good that you get to pick where is this coming from, because in most cases that is actually a way of communicating that there is something amiss. You know, we want to. There's a challenge. There's a problem there, and we just want to force things down their throat without appreciating that they also have a say, they have a voice over what we are actually doing. And this is why we do recommend that whenever we're having those family sessions, whenever we are trying to argue out a case, or even trying to make a decision, it's always important that you give them some space to float their views and why they're doing that. And you'll be surprised that they have some very brilliant ideas. You know, even compared to what the parents are. You know, and in most cases I have had parents, you know, say, I never knew that my child is very brilliant, you know. And you know, with toxic parents, what happens is they never get to see their children as grown-ups. The way that they interact with them, the way that they conduct
what does a child
for
even
them
know?
It's just a child, you know, and they never think that they will ever offer something that is meaningful, you know, to their well-being. And we have seen so many children suffer out of that. They can see, and even some families, they can be able to pick that there's a challenge in our family, and probably if we have this option and the other option, we could have some light at the end of the tunnel, but we never give them that space.
Mwalimu, earlier on when you were introducing yourself, please forgive me for asking you this again, but you said that you have accountancy for something that you enable children understand themselves. Please help me understand that again.
Yeah, sure, very important, and thank you for that opportunity. As I started, I said that I am the founder of the Accountancy Mathematics, and also the founder of the Accountancy Mathematics Mentorship Program.
Accountancy Mathematics Mentorship Program.
But there are two entities, though conjoined to be one. There's Accountancy Mathematics, and now there's Accountancy Mentorship Program. There are two entities. Now at Accountancy Mathematics, what we do is that during the holidays, we train people in mathematics. Mostly we give them some free mathematics lessons, and also we host some national online mathematics contest where schools from different places, they're able to do the contest while they are at home. And also we are able to rank them and also give them the results and also send the results to their schools.
For free?
For free. We don't charge them.
Wow.
Yeah, luckily enough. And now for the accountancy mentorship program, what we do is that we go to schools, we mentor students, and actually yesterday we were at a school in Gatondo South. It's called Isasiri Girls, where we are mentoring students. So what we do is that we go to schools, we mentor them on areas that usually affect them. There is things to do with academic excellence, that is content mastery and retention, things to do with the mindset, that is focus and ambition, and also things to do with discipline, time management, and all those things that students are going through. And I think the most thing I would say, or rather the most thing that makes the accountancy mentorship program to stand out is because that it is comprised of mostly the campus students. And you see, campus students have just finished high school just a few years ago. So they are able to understand the dynamics and also the changes that are occurring.
Yes.
And they're able to understand the problems that these children are going through. Yeah, so we go to schools, we mentor students, and we coach them, and we help them to realize who they are, that is discovering their passion, their vision, and so on.
That is interesting, very, very interesting. As we come to the end of the conversation, I would like to request you to tell me what your opinion is, Mr. Kagundu, in regards to, I really don't want to use the word toxic, but in quotes, toxic parents to their children, and how parents can cultivate a healthy relationship with their children and children with their parents.
Good. That's very important, and it's good that we say it by its name. You know, toxicity is toxicity. There is no labeling that. We can't have some BB on it.
Yes. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yes,
you know, and whenever we have toxicity, and especially with the children, more so in a household, I remember this is eventually affect how the kids are going to grow up. Okay, and as a way of managing the challenges that we have in the society, you know, the moral ills in the society, then we have to go back to our homes, all right?
Yes.
And look at what is ailing us. I always say that the family setup reflects, you know, the way the society is, and eventually how the national, or rather the whole nation is. And if we were to manage some of the challenges that we face on a national level, then we have to go back. And it's important for us to ask ourselves, is it that we have toxicity in our homes? Is it that we have toxic parents who will eventually bring up toxic children and eventually a toxic society? So that means that we need to take care of them. And this is where we say that our homes actually are heaven, you know, for the kids, whereby they should be brought up in such with a lot of sobriety, and more so a lot of support,
and
a lot of love and all that, right?
Yes.
And in case this happened to you, it's good that we appreciate that that we are the ones to break the chain. If I was brought up in a toxic family, then I'm the one to ensure that that doesn't trickle down to my children, so that at least I'm able to take care of generations that will come after me, right? For the children who may be having a challenge, and especially with their parents, it's always good to have your voice heard. And in most cases, they fear the way that their parents are going to react, you know. But remember, what is important is how you respond and not how your parents react. Let your voice be heard. If they are doing ABCD and you feel you're not comfortable with that, learn to communicate and get to know that this is not your problem. It's their challenge, all right? Because in most cases, the children tend to feel guilty over what their parents are actually going through or how they are conducting themselves. Because remember, a child who has been brought up in such a space, they tend to hate themselves. They feel like they don't have the self-worth, and eventually you find them actually tolerating toxic partners, you know, and they don't know how to say no. So we need actually to support this kind of a child in the best way possible.
I learned a new word yesterday.
Yes.
I learned a word called trauma bonding. So they tend to get relationship based on trauma bonding, like, oh, even you've gone through this, I've also gone through the same thing, oh, let's fall in love.
Because you can actually identify with the other person.
Yes.
But what does that tell you? That eventually that will be a chaotic relationship.
Family, another dysfunctional
and the
family.
children that will come out of it will be actually children that are really affected. So it's important that you get to heal yourself first. Even before you get into a new relationship, into another relationship, work on yourself first. You know, get to heal. If you experience all this, have someone who you can talk to. And we have so many counselors out there.
Yes, like
me
you.
and my fellow colleagues who are
Yes.
out there. And they're willing to support you, to work with you.
Yes, and I love how you've brought it towards your ending, because after this conversation, we will be talking about young parenthood. Like young adults who've gotten into parenthood, especially while in campus. That is the conversation. I really loved how you've brought it towards the end. Mwalimu, what is your opinion in regards to the parents and their relationship with their children, and also vice versa, children to their parents?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so good. And I would start with the parents. You know, the parents now say that they are now the instrumental, because you see, like now they are the drivers of the child. Because you see, if you ask each child, especially when they are young, the person who they would love to be, they'll say like, I want to be like my dad, because they are always looking upon you. They are copying your behavior.
You are that one person they see
Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah, all the time. Because the moment they were born, the first person they saw, it's you. When they are coming up, they are
Growing up.
they see you. They see you as the provider, so they see you like it's like you are their God. So I think the most important thing for parents is I would actually totally agree with my friend. That is, the parents should first work on themselves. That is to cultivate their character, so that they can be able to instill it well in their children. And now once we go now to the children relationship to their parents, you see sometimes you find that there are a lot of children who are keeping quiet with a lot of challenges. They are not exposing them. They are not talking to their parents. So it's good for them whenever they seem to have a challenge, they go, they tell their dad, their mom, I'm going through this, kindly help me. What can we do about this? Because you see, you cannot solve a challenge when it is not known. But once you've spoken about a certain challenge, then it is actually half solved, because now afterwards what remains is just to find the solution.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you so much for giving us your knowledge into this conversation. Where would we get you, Mr. Kagondu and Mr. Gideon? Mr. Kagondu?
Okay, on the social medias.
Everywhere, yes.
Everywhere.
Offices, social media, Simu.
Yeah, social media, we have Mindcare Africa, you know, and also Kagondu Junior for JNR, all right? If you want to reach out to us, 0720 333 993. Okay? Yes.
Mwalimu, where can we find you? Where can we find your books? Mwalimu has a whole mathematics encyclopedia. Can you imagine? Mwalimu, where can we find you, your content as well?
Oh, wow, thank you. And actually, it's good that you've mentioned about the book. I'd love just to mention one word about it. Because this book I've been sitting for a long time, locking myself, writing it, and one of the things that makes the book to stand out is that the book contains almost each and every testable question that is likely to appear there in KCSE. And actually the questions and the exercises have been carefully arranged in terms of topics, in terms of months and weeks, so that the child can be able to know that today I'm doing this sum and this sum. Because you say in mathematics, it's like other subjects. In mathematics, you have to do practice and practice and practice. So the book is there to enable the students to do constant practice. So for the people who'd love to get a copy of the book, they might find us as Accountancy Mathematics at all platforms. That is on Instagram, on Facebook, and also on YouTube. But to find me personally, you can find me on Instagram as Gideon W. Kariri, or you can get me via my number, or rather the Accountancy Mathematics number, that is 0796